Today is the day that we've all been waiting for, and it's time to build up my new Factor road bike. I've been riding a different bike for a while now, even though I had the sponsorship signed, but this is the bike that I will race my road races on. Yeah, it's been a while since I rode a proper fast road bike, more than half a year actually, so really it's a relief to see that it has finally come. For the frame set is the Factor Ostro VAM, so it's essentially a full-on aero bike that also is really light. Now they also have the O2 VAM and the 1. I didn't want to go for the 1 because that's an older design. This one is more appealing to me, certainly. It has more modern features. And I also didn't want to go for the O2 because that's a pure climbing bike, and for me and for racing in general, aerodynamics is what matters. So let's have a look at the features of this frame. Let's start from the front of the frame. The fork itself is a pretty distinctive feature of this frame set. If you look at it from this side, it's actually really wide and really deep as well for maximum aerodynamics. The width is added so the airflow doesn't get disturbed and hung up basically between the fork and the wheel. So it takes away the interaction that you get with different wheel sets and forks. Then the fork itself at the crown neatly integrates into the frame itself. So this is a pretty aggressive design, actually very deep. The other interesting thing about the fork is actually the steer design. Now first, it doesn't use an oversized top headset bearing. Actually, the brake hoses are routed in front of the D section, so if I just remove the stem for a little bit, okay. So unlike most traditional designs where you get a really large upper bearing and the steer tube is a stand round section and the hoses go around or in front of it. This way you save a lot of space and frontal area just because you have this small section here. And this means that you also need to use a bracing wedge like this one, and this then guides the hoses out to the bar and stem. Now this has a couple of advantages. Firstly, it protects the steer tube from being crushed, which has been a problem with some other brands, as you know, but this should solve it completely. And the other neat thing is actually the internal rib structure that you have here. This eliminates the need of an expander plug. This is an aluminum insert that's bonded and goes all the way. It has thread in it, so yeah, no expander plug needed. Basically, it also means that it's not really necessary to cut your steer tube flush at any point because yeah, it will be safe to ride. The other party trick that the Factor Ostro VAM frame set has are the headset bearings themselves. Now you might ask yourself what can be special about headset bearings. Now these are supplied as OEM by Ceramic Speed, and they feature the solid lube technology, which means that there's a polymer insert which basically replaces standard grease in there. It's typically used in food industry where you get a lot of cleaning, and this makes the bearings completely water resistant, and basically they should last the lifetime of the frame and don't need to be serviced. So that's extremely neat, particularly with integrated bike that routes the brake hoses through the headset, so you never need to have the hassle of, well, replacing the bearings. In this case it would mean disassembling the complete bike. So yeah, that's a feature I really like. Then if we go further back, we have the top tube, which again is a pretty unique feature of this frame set, and I haven't noticed it before because it's not so well visible. It actually has this channel in the middle of it, so it's a very interesting section. I suppose this is for added stiffness. It's certainly very interesting. And if you go down to the down tube, this is, well, a really large section again. It's designed to shield the water bottles from the airflow, or the front one. It also has this little indentation in there. Just, I suppose, here it's designed for the water bottle itself. And what you can also notice, and Factor are pretty proud about this, is that you can design a really effective airflow shape because of the way they manufacture the tubes. The radii here are very sharp, so not so rounded as on other bikes. Then if you go down to the bottom bracket area, again, this is a massive section of carbon fiber. It also has this raised lip or filled section. Typically you see this on time trial bikes, but it's very effective at cleaning up the airflow around the drivetrain. If you want to use one by, the front derailleur hanger is also removable, which I probably will use this feature at some point. The bottom bracket itself, again, it's another pretty unique feature. So it's T47 threaded, which is a first for me. I've never used this one. But it's also asymmetric, so actually the drive side cup is outboard and the non-drive side is inboard, so a bit of an interesting design. Now you might think that this would create problems, but actually a bottom bracket together with adapters to fit every type of spindle, of crank, are all included with the frame set, which we'll go through in a minute. The seat tube, no surprises here. Again, another truncated aerofoil shape, also with a filled triangle section here, also very similar to time trial bikes. The internal binder is accessed through this bolt here from the bottom, which you then will basically press out into the frame using the bolt, and that's what clamps the seat post in place. Again, truncated aerofoil shape, very simple, one bolt straight through, clamping the seat rails, so I really like that. This is available with a 0 offset. What I have here is a 25mm offset. You also get this little rubber grommet around it just to prevent water ingress, and it sits really neatly in here. Then if you go to the back of the frame, you can also notice very chunky asymmetric chainstays. Also a neat little rubber protector, should provide more protection and less rattle hopefully than just standard protection tape on there. And we also have very thin, almost pencil thin seat stays, really for some extra flex and comfort. And of course they are dropped as well, as you get these days. A couple of other features to note about the frame set: a nice little metal chain suck protector, so that's nice. Then we have replaceable threads on both the fork and the rear through axle, and then we of course have a replaceable derailleur hanger. Actually there is one spare included with the frame set as well. So yeah, that's pretty much all for now about the frame set. I weighed it with the hardware and it's 950 grams, so not the absolute lightest out there, but it's very light for a bike with such an amount of aero features. So yeah, weight doesn't really matter to me, as I said before anyways, but it's nice to see it decently light. Another thing that adds weight is the pretty luxurious paint job on there. This is not the version of the frame that I originally wanted to have, because I preferred the most subdued black colorways, but this one was available and hence I gave it a try, and honestly I really pleasantly surprised, because on the website it doesn't look amazing, to be honest, but here in the flesh it's really outstanding. I think it's the nicest frame that I ever had. You get these gray and white accents with a little colored flourishes to it, so really it is beautiful in the flesh, so I can definitely recommend it. Of course that's pretty subjective, but I like it, so I'm really happy that it turned out this way and not just a regular black or raw carbon bike. Okay, so that's all about the frame set. Let's have a look at the components that I'm going to use for it. So the first major thing that we get on a bike is the group set, obviously. The one I'm going to use is, well, nothing special really. It's Durace Di2, but not the new one that many people are upgrading to now. This is the 11-speed version. It's brand new, but it's 11-speed. And the reason for this is availability mostly. I didn't want to risk it and having to wait months for the new group set. This one was readily available. So this way I'll also have the gravel bike and a time trial bike in the same group sets basically, so all interchangeable if something goes wrong. So that's the main driver behind that decision. For the rear mech, I'm going to use, this is actually the rear mech I had on my previous time trial bike. It has the SLF oversized aerodynamic cage. So that's pretty neat. I really like this because unlike ceramic speed, it's made from an actual carbon fiber plate, so it's much more sturdy, and it's also more aero because of this design that's filled in basically, so very aerodynamic. Another aerodynamic finishing touch that we have are the Wahoo Speedplay pedals, now upgraded with the shorter spindles like I showed you last time around. For the crank and power meter, I have the Quark D4 from last year, the 5339 Durace chainrings. This might be subject to change in the upcoming couple of weeks, so stay tuned about that. And then for the saddle, I have the fabric. I'm not actually sure what it's called at this point, but it's a short nose saddle, similar to what I've been using so far, and it's decently light, actually quite reasonably priced as well, and I find it extremely comfortable, so I'm happy with that. I'm also going to touch up the white frame with the white bar tape. This is the Silkan Astro Pilote, which is my favorite bar tape so far. A bit of a special touch, I guess. These will be the sprint shifters that I'm going to use for the group set. Now normally you get these frame sets with a blacking integrated carbon fiber bar and stem, and I would really love to have that, but again, due to availability I can't use it now because it wasn't ready in my size. So I'm going to improvise a little bit, and I've actually found a solution. So I'm going to use the standard stem, for which I manufactured basically a little adapter which enables the brake hoses to exit the frame. And then I'm going to use an NV SES aero handlebar in the smallest size, of course. This is already outfitted with my custom Shimano DR2 wires, so I can fit the sprint shifters to the levers using the existing connectors without needing any junctions or that sort of thing. And in this box we have the parts that come with the frame. So this is the bottom bracket that I've mentioned before, and as you can see here are all the reducers that enable to use any crank on the market basically. So these are the standard 30mm bearings, and you can reduce them to the dub spindle or the 24mm spindle, and there are also spacers included to really match that. So all bases covered here. As you can see, one inboard, one outboard. Then we have the blacking computer mount. This should go on the blacking handlebar ideally, but we don't have that yet, unfortunately. So some more spacers. Then we have seat post ears for the round seat rails, not used now. The spare derailleur hanger, as I already mentioned. You get some bar tape, but this is black, so I'll stick to the white one. And then we have some headset parts, a couple of spacers, the transition kit. Again, this is for the blacking handlebar. And then we have The top cap's a tall one, so you don't need to use too many spacers, and a short one here. The spacers themselves are actually split, so you don't have to undo the brake hoses. So yeah, it's easier to dial in your fit. And then we have a couple of blanking ports and some small hardware for the frame itself and the cable guides. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I forgot to mention, this frame set is for electronic shifting only and obviously disc brake only. But that's pretty typical these days. And finally the wheels. This is a brand new set of head Vanquish 6s. Again, Dura-Ace cassette 1130 and the new MT900 rotors. This is actually a bit of a change for me because previously I was supplied with Vanquish 6s, so I rode those extensively, but I also had Vanquish 4s. But recently I sold my Vanquish 4s to get another pair of 6s just because this wheel set is so extremely stable in the wind that I didn't really found any point of having 4s, because yeah, they're around 150 grams lighter or so, but there's no real scenario for me where that would matter, because while we're racing, aero is what matters. So yeah, this is what I'll be running. 2 wheel sets of these, one for training, one for racing. The tire here is a 26mm turbo cotton with a latex tube, obviously, so similar setup that I've been using last year, so no real changes here. And that's pretty much it regarding the build. So I really want to ride this bike tomorrow, so better get going and get the bike ready, so stay tuned for that. Okay guys, so the bike is now ready. As you can see, it turned out to be pretty great actually. We're filming this on a Monday morning. I built the bike on Friday evening quite late, so I've also managed to do my weekend's training on it, and I was really impressed by how it rides. The build itself was pretty straightforward, really the standard what you get with these integrated bikes, except that I had to be a little bit creative with the front end setup, as I don't have the dedicated black ink bar and stem yet, but it's on the way, so should come soon hopefully. A couple of you have been asking on Instagram about the weight of the bike. I'm not a weight weenie, and it doesn't really matter to me because yeah, there are a whole lot more interesting or important things, should I say, when it comes to performance. So obviously aerodynamics, drivetrain efficiency and rolling resistance, in that order basically. But still, it's coming in at 7.4 kilos, which is not super light, and it's not heavy either. It's basically bang on what these modern race bikes weigh, and it's perfectly fine. As I said earlier, the white paint job probably adds a little bit to that, but I'm definitely happy with that. So some of the first impressions about the bike itself. The one thing I didn't expect was the comfort. So the ride really is sublime. It completely filters the undulations and imperfections in the road, so I was very pleasantly surprised about that. Speed, of course, much higher, particularly compared to the bike I was riding until now, but I've yet to do some aero testing on it, so hopefully when the weather improves I'll be able to do that. One thing that actually struck me after seeing the frame for the first time is that people call this, and even Factor call it, an all-around race bike, that it's both lightweight and aero. Well, I disagree with that a little bit, because if I look at the frame shapes and the fork and its transition and the depth of the tubes, I would prefer to say that it's a full-on aero bike that just happens to be really quite light. And yeah, that's why it rides like. It really feels fast, particularly where you can actually see it and experience it is the descending speed. Otherwise it's quite hard to quantify, but as I said, I will test that in the future. So overall I'm very pleased with how it turned out, and actually a couple of things I had to adjust. So the first thing was the reach on the brake levers. I had to move this all the way in just because of the shape of the handlebar. This way it's easier for me to, well, reach. Of course, being back on electronic shifting is a real relief after riding mechanical for 6 months. Now don't get me wrong, it was completely fine, and it's actually really nice if you just do it a couple of times as a refreshment, but to do training on it day in day out, it got a bit annoying. So electronic it is with sprint shifters. That's great. I've also had the chance now to try the new Wahoo Speedplay pedals, and here the engagement is much more crisp and secure, so that's a positive improvement about comparing to the old Speedplays. Also happy with that. Another thing that I might want to change in the future are these bottle cages, because they're a bit worn out, so the bottle rattles in them, but that's a minor thing really. You can also see that here I have my old Vanquish 6s in the bike, and it's really just down to the tires, because the ones here are pretty worn and cut from the rocks, and it's still pretty, well, there's a lot of debris on the roads out here, so I just kept these on. I don't want to ruin the new tires. I will reserve those for racing. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can say for now about this bike. As many of you have apparently agreed, it looks awesome, and it's probably the nicest looking bike that I've had so far. Kind of reminds me of the Trackmado 9 that I had with a custom paint job. So yeah, really happy with how it turned out. and I will definitely keep you posted about how it performs in the long run. So far so good, so if you're interested in that, stay tuned, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Cheers.